Hello again, everybody. My name is John D Healy. My podcast is called It's Good to Talk. People know me because I produced this book, and that's how it all started for my good friend Tony McGurn. Covers all his life from 1941 up to a couple of years ago. It's also on audio, and you can get it on Amazon. Do look out for it on audio or Amazon. Some adult content, be careful. I'm also sponsored by Liffey Van Lines, a moving company here in New York, and they'll soon be 50 years of age. They're a long time around, almost as long as Jeopardy. So today, I promised you before, I was going to talk about one of my success stories from Ireland, a restaurant called Mother Hubbards. It was in Moyvalley, County Kildare, and when I purchased it and all of the building and everything that goes with it. So I bought it in June 21, 1990. Before, what was there was just like a caravan truck stop type thing. It was a 1 acre site, and I drove in one evening and I had a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and I sat down. I did an outdoor bench because it was an outdoor situation. And the owner came out. It was quite evening, and I said, "What's the sign in the grass out there? It looks like something's for sale." He said, "This is for sale." The site. So I asked him a few questions about what was involved. So I explained it's about an acre size. And he didn't give away too much more. He just said that the sale was with a broker in Enfield, which was a town about 5 miles away, and it'd still be open. I was driving in that direction towards Dublin, and he told me to stop in there and speak to the broker. And I did. And I went in to meet the broker. He was a young man, and he explained that the site was a 1 acre site indeed, that it was a caravan selling tea and coffee and short menu food, and it was there for a number of years, and it was quite popular, and it had gone up for auction about a month before, and there was a big turnout for the auction. There was some issues because the site didn't have running water. The water was supplied with a garden hose from an old lady next door, from her little pump or well or whatever the case may be. That was one thing. It was at the end of a line for electricity as well, so electricity was going to be another problem. That was two issues. So at the day of the auction, the broker told me there was a big turnout, and there was some Japanese businessmen there, and they were willing to bid on the price on the site as well. It's just a site, there was no building, and the site was what was for sale. So the owner was a very flamboyant type of guy, and he saw these Japanese businessmen, and they were kind of sniggering at something. Maybe not him, maybe it was something else, who knows. But he got a little bit paranoid, and he got annoyed, and he pulled the property off the market just for that little hitch. So I said, "Fair enough." I said, "You've explained a lot to me." And then we talked about price. He told me what he was asking for, and it was a huge amount. Well, in my eyes, at that time, just for a site with no running water, and a lot of other little issues like that, maybe. It was at the end of within Moyvalley, County Kildare, which is a typical Kildare. So you're close to Westmeath on one side, and you're close to Meath on the other side. So you're like kind of an only child, I guess. You're left in the middle on your own when it comes to services from either Westmeath or Meath, and indeed Kildare themselves, the county councils, I mean. So I told him that I would swing back the following day and meet the owner again and see could I, negotiate something with him and all that, even though I knew I would have to come back to the broker in the end anyways to complete the deal if it was to be successful. So I went back to the owner, I think it was a day later, and I sat down. I said, "I met with the broker. I said, I do like the site and I can see its potential. And I said, I'm willing to make an offer." Now, I did know that he only had a number of months. He was dealing with the health authorities as well, and he only had a number of months to get this situation together to build a proper restaurant or sell the site so someone could build a proper restaurant using the name of Mother Hubbards, Moyvalley, County Kildare. So I made him an offer. It was about maybe £10,000 less than what he was asking, but he was asking a big number. And I had previously just sold a property, so I had the cash, and I told him I was willing to buy it ASAP, as soon as possible, with some, I guess, restrictions on my side. I said, if I do the deal and I pay you the money, pay the deposit, and get everything rolling, I said, I want to be in on the site ASAP. I don't want to wait for the contracts to be signed with the lawyers and down the road and that. I said, I'm taking a risk because if anything fails, I would lose my 10% deposit. Okay? So he understood that and he said he trusted me. And I said, okay. And we shook hands on that. And I went back to the broker. I said, we have a deal for a slightly lesser amount than what you were asking. But all is good. He's good to go and I'm good to go. Except I need to be in on the site like next Monday morning. So that was all agreed, and I paid the deposit to the broker, and in a few weeks, full amount of the money was transferred over to the owner's bank account. So now I'm in on the site, and now he had outline plan and permission from a local engineer. His name was Mr. McManus. He was from Maynooth. And I didn't really know him at all because he had dealt with the previous owner, not me. So we had an outline drawn. It was like the shape of an octagon, but it kind of had tentacles coming out of it on the side, like walls coming out of each section of the octagon. I did not like that at all, that part of the drawing, because there was a lot of trees, tall trees, oak trees, and all kinds of trees at the back, in the background of the site. So I figured these walls would create a problem in the wintertime with leaves and debris, because there was corners and corners and corners. So I thought, okay, first thing that has to go is those tentacles that are sticking out. They don't serve any purpose. They didn't even look pretty, to be honest. So I said, they got to go. So that was the first change Mr. McManus did to me. He charged me a fee, I think, for doing up the new drawing. And he was willing to stay with me for, I think, 10 weeks to oversee the work being carried out, because I'm my own contractor now, okay? So it seemed like every time he arrived on the site, I guess I would have something else maybe changed slightly. I changed the location of the kitchen. I changed the location of the bathrooms and the dining area. Those were the main changes. There was no wheelchair access on the original drawings. And a young man drove in one day in his car and he took out his wheelchair and he rolled up to the caravan. And the owner introduced me as being the new owner and I'd be taken over. And that guy said to me, I guess you'll forget about people like me, people in wheelchairs. And I said, no, I will not forget about people like you in wheelchairs. And right away I went and set about designing the wheelchair toilet. And it was relatively easy, not too complicated. We just moved the ladies' toilet slightly that way, and we moved the gents' toilet slightly that way. We put in a big access door in the middle, and we put in a new disabled toilet with all the mod cons, proper standards for everything. And we even got to the stage we put in a little baby changing thing there as well, if someone needed to change a nappy of a child when they were on the road. So here we go, and now we're getting in on the site to start the building. So you remember I told you at the beginning there was no running water. So the first thing I had to do was to clear the site of debris and bushes and wild overgrowth and all that to get down to the soil to make it easy access. And then there had been a guy previous to me with the other owner who's they're known as a diviner. Okay, you see someone with like a little piece of wood like this, and when it perks to the ground, that means there's a spring well down there or water. So he pointed out to me all of the locations that he had found. And he had, in fairness, there was probably 4 or 5 potential wells maybe on the site. So I picked the one that I thought for some reason that might be the best. I don't know why, but the location of it was the best from my point of view as to where it was to the east side of the site. So after I had the site cleared with my friend Tommy Joe Murphy, he's from Mayo, a good buddy of mine for years. And the first day we were on the site at 5:30 in the morning a.m. We're cutting away all those bushes with handsaws and chainsaws and handsaws and bow saws as well. And we had a lot of fun doing it. And we were there, and by 9 o'clock we had it all cleared. And of course Tommy Joe jokingly said, why wouldn't we have it cleared? We're here half the night, okay? They weren't even up on RT radio the radio program in the morning when we started working, he said jokingly. So now the next thing I had to do was get in a machine, a JCB, and I knew it was going to be what's known as a shallow well as opposed to a deep bore well, okay? But the shallow well I thought would be sufficient, and so it was. So the guy is digging down and digging down and digging down, you know, with the forklift, taking it up, scooping it away, putting it in a trailer and scooping it away. And we're down about maybe 12, 14 feet. And yes, here comes water and lots of it. We had 3 concrete liner pipes. I think they're about 4 foot wide by about maybe 4 or 5 feet deep. And they have a rim where they attach to each other. And the machine driver, JCB driver, he was very, very good. He was very precise. He was able to pick up the pipe with a strap and guide it over to the center of the hole where the water was gushing up and get it down evenly. It's important that it has to be even from an aesthetic point of view at any rate. And got that pipe down before the water was going to fill it up. And then you put another pipe on top of that one. And then you put another one on top of that one. And then you have your well with water. So now we have water. Prior to that, I was working at a part-time job selling water filters. So I thought I knew about if I found water, I would be able to purify it and clean it up and make it like drinking water. So I got to work on that, and I had to develop that further. There was more to than basic filters. So I got a company in who were expertise on water filtration, even down to using things like UV lights, ultraviolet lights, which are actually used today, probably here in New York City, in huge water treatment systems, because it kills any bacteria that might be in the water and purifies it. So let me see what else I'd like to tell you. So the next thing was to locate hardware stores in the area and outlets for buying cement and everything else that goes with a building project. I had only studied in high school, maybe for a year, building studies, so I knew little bits and pieces, but actually those little bits and pieces were relevant. So one day I had a van that I used to drive at the time, not a car. So myself and my good friend Tommy Joel, we said we would scout around the area because we're not from that area at all. So we went towards Westmead and we went down a side road to a village called Kildare. It's a sleepy little village in the middle of nowhere, one might think. But we saw a huge, hardware store, but then we saw a huge shed out the back, massive shed. And we drove down there and there was a young man making roof trusses. And the roof truss thing was new to me at any event. And I was thinking of the restaurant, which was 42 foot 6 inches each way from the octagon shape. And I went in there and asked the man, I said, how long can you make those trusses? And he said, as long as you want. And I thought, okay, 42 foot 6. He said, yeah, no problem at all. The way a roof truss is made is the joining of the timbers. Let's say they're 4x2s, for example, as a measurement of a piece of wood. And maybe that piece of wood is maybe, let's say it's 14 feet long. Well, then, okay, you have that one, then you join another one to it, and that brings you to 28 foot, and then you go 2 more and 2 more. Joined by adding a brace between the 2 pieces of wood, and it's like an aluminium brace that has like dents in it, and it clamps into the 2 pieces of wood, join it. And from an engineering point of view, this piece of wood is going to be stronger at that joint than it would be at the natural wood itself. So they're extremely strong, and they're engineered in a way that yes, they can span 50 foot or whatever, but then they have support angles as it goes across the bottom and then up at an angle and all that. And it was a perfect solution for me because I didn't want any columns in the middle of the dining room holding up the roof. Otherwise there would be columns, and that columns means an obstruction, okay? Not to say nothing against columns, they can be blended into the design and the architecture, of course, but I was happier not to have the column. So we said about that. I went back in to meet the owner of the hardware and said I explained who I was and what I was going to be doing. And he was delighted and over the moon to have me as a new customer because he's obviously the nearest hardware supply to me. There was another smaller little place that I did buy smaller things from, like just for convenience sake and just to be a good neighbor. I'm new in the community, so I have got to be nice to everybody because I want to get on and I want business from them down the road when I open and all that. So then the building process starts. I get the machine guy back to clear the site of the topsoil and all that. And then the next job for him is to dig out the foundation. Now bear in mind the shape of the octagon. Octagon has 8 sides, the shape of a stop sign, which I tie into marketing down the road in another episode. So he's a good machine driver, as I told you. So he has to dig out the trench for the foundation all the way around in the shape of the octagon, right? Which is a little tricky. It's not like just a square, which would have been easy and easy to build too. I'll come to my block layer later. When he had it built, he told me next time I'm building something to build it square because there's a lot of cutting on the blocks when you come to each little corner of the 8-sided shape. So where are we at? So now the machine guy has to dig out the foundation. Then I have to order ready mix concrete, which is pretty straightforward. There's a company that does that in Ireland. So you just measure the length of the trench and the depth of the foundation. And that calculation gives you how many meters, because we're in the EU, how many meters of ready mix concrete we need. And you hope the day is dry when that machine, that big truck comes and it's mixing and mixing and mixing. And I have to have my crew there with wheelbarrows, even though there is a chute on the thing to get it in. So all this concrete goes into the foundation. It has to be compacted so it's solid, and then it's allowed to dry for a few days before we get to the next phase. And the next phase involves ordering the blocks for the building itself. And my block there was a guy called Vincent Nocton, and I went to high school with him. I actually got him his first job on a building site in Belmullet, County Mayo, building advanced factories, when I think we were about maybe 17 years old. So it was good to have someone back that I knew and I trusted and all that. And then he brought a buddy of his, John McDonald, who I also went to school with. And then the other 2 guys on site was my cousin Gerard Lennon and his friend Garroge Keating. And they had just come out of Templemore. They were just young policemen in Dublin. And when you come out of Templemore as a new guard, you can be put on a boring situation, like just minding the front door, the front gate of an embassy, standing there for hours, just doing nothing, only looking at the world go by. But this was new and exciting for them on a part-time basis, because I think they work nights anyways. So it wasn't like that we're doing hard work as guards do, or maybe do, I don't know. Well, I do know, but we won't talk about that. But this was good physical work, and we had lots of fun during the building process. And Tommy Joe Murphy, that guy, he was a great character and very, very witty, and we had lots of fun as well. So it wasn't just all hard work. So I'll come back to that in the next episode, talk a little bit more about the building process, and then we'll get to opening the restaurant. I'll talk about stock rotation, stock management, menu design, so it helps with stock rotation and stock management. I'll talk about hiring staff, doing interviews, and all of that good stuff. And here's a good one. While myself and Tommy Joe were enjoying stuff going on in the summer of 1990, the World Cup soccer was on, and Ireland were doing extremely well. I think they lost to Italy by a goal near the end, and there was big celebrations in Dublin when they came back because it was a big achievement. World Cup 1990. Nelson Mandela, president of Africa at the time, he visited Dublin. That was a big deal as well in its own way. And then a local guy we knew from Mayo owned horses, and he was doing extremely successful in England with his horses. And about a week into myself and Tommy Joe getting going with the building and the foundation, there was a race on. It was a Saturday, and Tommy Joe said we should go in and put a bet on this guy. The guy was from Bangor, County Mayo, I think Tommy Dorn, and he had a lot of successful horses. But this day, he had two horses running, one in the afternoon and one later in the evening. And I was kind of new to betting. I didn't know too much. But Tommy Joe explained, like an each way bet means if the horse comes first, second, or third, you win something back. Of course, if he comes first, you win more back. It's called an each way bet. So the first race, the horse was running at odds of 16-1. So he was kind of like an outsider. And the second race later in the day was favourite. So I came up with a genius plan, as sometimes I do. And I said, we'll bet on the first race, okay? First, we won't bet on the two races, on the same ticket. We'll wait to see what happens. So we put on, I think, £10 each on an each way bet on the horse. The name of the horse, by the way, was called One for the Boys. So sure enough, the horse came in first. Well, I said to Tommy Joe, there's no need to bet on the second race because the odds of the owner having two horses win with two horses running the same day and they both win is not likely. So I said, we'll just collect our money and we'll go and have one for the boys. We had more than one for the boys. So we went and we enjoyed a few drinks to celebrate our winnings and had a good laugh. And then we're back on site the following Monday again and more work to do. So I'm going to continue that in the next episode. And this is about Mother Hubbards restaurant, Moyvalley, County Kildare. When I started building in 1990, and it went on to sell it in 1995. It featured in BBC, Channel 4, various TV stations, various radio programs as well, and the Bridgestone Good Food Guide, 5 years in a row with favorable reviews, which got me into newspapers and etc. etc. So one success led to another success, and that's where the marketing comes in, and my background is marketing. So for now, I'm going to leave you, and I'll tune in soon, maybe in a few days, when we'll talk about the second part 2 of Mother Hubbards Restaurant, Moyvalley, County Kildare, Ireland. Thank you for now. Bye-bye.